All right, just a quick hit here. I wanted to speak about the subject of time when it comes to the prophecies, right? Because over the years, you've had individuals who, might have believed for a period of time, but then since things didn't unfold how they envisioned it would happen, they ended up, going back into the world. Like a good example I'll give the audience that a lot of you would be familiar with would be a co-host that we had on our live streams over the last couple years, excuse me, named Shareg, right, aka the Mind of God. He kept saying that in his view, he believed that Christ would return by January 1st, 2022. Then when that didn't happen, then January 1st, 2023, and so on and so forth. And then the dude, eventually stepped away, and nobody's seen this guy anywhere for like, 2 damn years, if not longer. You know what I'm saying? So that's just an example of how people can, get all bugged out when, things don't unfold how they anticipated, it happening. So this is just something you need to consider, when we deal with these prophecies, like say for instance, when we talk about, the downfall of America, which is Mystery Babylon the Great in the Bible, or we talk about the MOTB, right, Revelation 13:16, the mark, prophecies like this, they're in the Bible to forewarn us, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen like tomorrow or next week or even this year. And I'm going to give a couple of precepts. First I'm going to go to Isaiah chapter 42 and verse 9. It says, "Behold, the former things are come to pass, and new things do I declare. Before they spring forth, I tell you of them." Right. And this is how we know the Bible is true and reliable, because there's been certain events in the world and through history that the Bible has foretold happening, and then it actually does come to pass. Like one we're living through right now that we're starting to see happening before our eyes is the MOTB, right? Revelation 13:16, which I got to watch the wording I use on this platform. But we're starting to see that happening right now with, the digital age, right? Now they're moving into, digital currency, right? You have all these, Bitcoin currencies right now and, being able to pay with card. But very soon they're going to upgrade it to where you put a chip inside the hand, and that's what you can use to buy and sell, just as the Bible says. So that's one thing that we see starting to take place in the world. And it's certainly not in its full form yet, clearly, but it's starting to take place, right? The technology has technically existed since the 90s. I remember the Apostles of Great Millstone, talking about how, they've been out there since the early 2000s, talking about the chip, right? But the technology existed back in the 90s, where they able to, you know, um, implant a chip inside of a person and, for many different uses, right? Like some instances could be medical usage. Like, say, for instance, there's a movie out there called Upgrade. Recommend looking that up, right? And this guy gets like, superhuman abilities by getting this, chip put into him, right? And then people can put their medical information on that, right? If you come into a emergency room without ID on you, all they got to do is scan the chip, and they'll be able to see who you are, where you come from, your date of birth, so on and so forth, right? That's the digital age that we're moving into right now, but that's in the prophecies, right? So hey, God gave John that vision 2,000 years ago, but just now today we're starting to see that unfold in the world, right? Slowly but surely it's starting to happen. Like, say, for instance, like I first learned about that back in like 2014, 2015, something around there. So for me, it's been 10 years that I've known about that. And certainly over the course of the years, you start to see, where it starts to get introduced. Like, say, for instance, I literally know a dude. I believe this guy's name is like Jared McDane on YouTube, and the dude literally showed me that he has the chip implanted inside his hand. It's like, damn. First I thought it was just, trolling around, but the dude literally did a short and showed that the dude has that implanted in his hand. Like you could literally see it under his skin. It's like, damn. So there's people out here who are starting to get these things, but they're not, in a worldwide, popularity yet, right? But it's starting to, unfold that way as time goes by. Right? It's starting to reveal itself as the time goes by. This is the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 2. We'll start at 1 and read down to 3. It says, I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower, and will watch to see what he will say unto me. And what shall I answer when I am reproved? And the Lord answered me and said, Write the vision, make it plain upon tables, that he may run who reads it. For the vision is yet for a appointed time, but at the end it will speak, and it will not lie. Though it tarries, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry. Right. So it might seem like, these prophecies in the scriptures are taking, a long time to unfold themselves, living here in, the day-to-day life, but truly, well, on God's timeline, as it says in, was that 2 Peter 3:8, which we'll get that later, but it says that 1 year to God, right, 1 day to God is like 1,000 years in man's time, right? So really, in the heavenly realm where, God and the Son are, it's really only been 2 days since, Christ was last walking this earth, right? In their perspective of time up in that realm compared to down here. Right. So, and, this is where preterists get, misunderstood, because they'll read verses that talk about like, oh, well, I'm coming quickly, or, it's going to be a short amount of time. And they'll be like, well, see what that means. It all happened in the first century. It's like, no, you just, lack understanding, right? That the Bible uses these terms, like quickly, or, soon to come, or it's near, right, at the doors. It's using that, speaking to us humans from a spiritual sense of time, right? God's perception of time, which is completely separate from our understanding and perspective of time, down here on this physical earth. Another thing that should take to note is you see all these people like atheists go around and talk about, well, if God actually existed, well, why is he not acting upon what we see going on in the world? Like, say, for instance, all of the robbery and murder and theft, and wickedness going on around the world, and, all the wars taking place. If God was actually real, well, why would he not intervene and, bring the justice upon these people doing wrong in the world? And that is a good question, but the Bible gives us an answer as to why. So this is 2 Ezra chapter 4 and verse 37. It says, By measure has he measured the times, and by number has he numbered the times. And he does not move nor stir them until the said measure has been fulfilled. Right, so that's telling you is that God has given all these nations on earth a certain time to rule. Like, say, for instance, the Roman Empire, the Babylonian Empire, the Canaanite Empire, hell, Great Britain. We could keep going on and on, right? All these nations around the world and throughout history, God has given them a certain amount of time that he's allowing them to have rulership over the earth. But then there's going to come a day when there's going to be a reckoning to pay, right? There's going to be a day which is, quickly approaching us here, where these nations are going to be dropped down out of power, right? That's why when we read Revelation 19, talks about Christ had many crowns on his head and he went forth conquering the nations, right? So when Christ comes back, he's going to bring all these nations under his feet, right? All nations are going to be bowed down and put into subjection, right? Underneath Christ and the 144,000, which are going to be ruling the earth along with Christ, in the end times, right? But right now, today, the time hasn't ran out yet, right? The time has not ran its course. That's why you see all these evil things going on in the world. You see all these, church, murders taking place, right? Churches being set on fire, people setting Bibles on fire out on the streets, people doing all types of, wicked and evil things out here in the world. And people say, well, why is the God not doing anything about it? Well, the Bible gives you an answer. God's not going to move nor stir the times until the said measure has been fulfilled. And that means the time hasn't been fulfilled yet, right? Like, say, for instance, America is in rapid decline, but that doesn't mean it's going to fall tomorrow. That doesn't mean America is going to go down next week. It doesn't even mean it's going to happen this year even. Hell, who knows? It could be 10 years out, could be 15 years out. It certainly does not look like that the way things are going, but nobody knows, right? None of us have a crystal ball that we can look into and foretell the future. right? Like, say, for instance, like, you got all these dummies on the internet talking about that, oh, well, they, done some number crunches and found out that Christ is going to return on like September the 23rd, 2027, or, such and such date, right? They'll give all these different dates and time that they say the return of Christ or the rapture is going to happen. And year after year after year, they end up getting it all wrong. And even when you correct these individuals and say, well, how the hell could y'all know the day and the hour if Christ himself literally said that nobody knows the day and the hour? He himself doesn't know, neither did the angels know, but only the Father knows. So if Christ or the angels don't even know, then how the hell does, say for instance, a still small voice, how does she know that day and that hour if even if Christ said it, he doesn't even know? So that's a cut right there. Right? That's a that's a big cut right there. Yeah, but the truth is, just looking at how everything is unfolding in the world, it certainly looks to be, around the corner, right? Like, just like if you read Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, Christ warned about that when you see these things start to happen in the world, you'll know that it is near, right? Even at the doors, right? When you see the wars, the uproars of the people, the earthquakes, taking place all around the world, right? Mass poverty and, lack of food, right? Famine, and so on and so forth, right? Christ warned about all those things that they'd be taking place at a rapid rate in the end times, and we're seeing that take place right now at a rapid rate. And it's all increasing, right? It's all getting worse, right? As the years go by, things just keep continuing to go on the downward spiral. So we'll end off the video with 2 Peter chapter 3. We'll read from verse 8 down to verse 13. Good chapter to end it off on. It says, "But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are as one day. The Lord is not slack concerning his promise, as some men count slackness, but is long-suffering towards us, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements they will melt with fervent heat, and the earth also and all the works that are therein, they shall be burned up. Seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of persons ought ye to be, in all holy conversation and godliness, looking for and hastening unto the coming of the day of the Lord, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for a new heavens and a new earth, wherein dwells righteousness," right? And that's, what those of us in this truth, that's what we're teaching towards, right? That's what we're looking towards. That's what we're teaching towards. We say, to hell with, the modern day, world we're living in, right? To hell with America, to hell with the UK, to hell with Australia, to hell with all these nations, right? We want Christ to set up his kingdom that's going to rule over all nations. What is that? Daniel 2:44 says that in the days of these kings, the God of heaven shall set up a kingdom that shall break in pieces all nations, and it shall reign forever upon the earth. Right? That's what we're teaching people to look forward to. Because all these kingdoms right now in the world today, they're all temporal, right? America is temporal. Britain is temporal, right? Russia is temporal. Right? It's not going to be there forever. It's very easy for these nations to crumble, right? And we're starting to see that before our eyes, in every aspect, nations are starting to collapse before our eyes. And again, it doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow or next week or even this year, but the writing's on the wall, for lack of better terms, right? When you read like Daniel, the 6th chapter, you can read about when, what was it? I believe it was Nebuchadnezzar, right? He lost the kingdom that night, right? Handwriting came on the wall and told him that the kingdom's been taken from him. And then, the king of the Medes came up and, took the kingdom from him, right? But the point is, in metaphorical stance today, you can see the writing on the wall. And what that writing is saying is that, the time is running out, not only for the United States, which is Mystery Babylon the Great, but for all other nations in the world, right? Hey, you got to get right or you're going to get put down. That's just the way it goes, man. And, when Christ comes back, you know, these nations are going to find out the hard way. Right now, that's, you know, soon approaching. Right, nobody knows that day or an hour, but by the signs, it's you know, clearly close. But anyway, I don't want to make the video too drawn out. Just want to go on a quick rant about that, and I'll close it up there.